new recording space, new camera. Same old videos about how I was disappointed by some of the X-Men movies. So, yeah, some things never change. I have X-Men movies that I love and X-Men movies that I don't. X2 is probably my favorite superhero movie ever made. Logan is terrific, and X-Men First Class is a lot of fun. And the ones that I don't love, X3, The Last Stand, X-Men Apocalypse, Dark Phoenix, Origins Wolverine, although I do have a special place in my heart for that movie. It's just bordering on being cheesy enough to be awesome. But then there's a bunch in the middle. X1 is good. The Wolverine is fine. The Deadpool movies are fun. And then, sitting exactly halfway between love and don't love is X-Men Days of Future Past. It came out in 2014. It was kind of the sequel to X-Men First Class, and it was kind of the sequel to X-Men The Last Stand, and it was also kind of the sequel to The Wolverine. Basically, it brought all of the different continuities of these movies together, and it adapted a classic X-Men storyline called Days of Future Past, where, in an apocalyptic future, the mutant-hunting robot Sentinels have taken over the world, and the X-Men send a member of the X-Men back in time to stop the events that set the Sentinel apocalypse in motion. It was incredibly popular, one of the first comic stories to deal with a alternate future timeline, something that would show up again in the X-Men stories with the Age of Apocalypse and all over comics. And while there is a lot to like about this movie, my issue comes from it being kind of unbalanced, because there are two timelines going on at once, a future timeline with all of the mutants from X-Men 1, 2, 3, and the Wolverine, along with the past timeline, which is the continuation of X-Men First Class, so Professor X, Beast, and Magneto, and then Quicksilver eventually, trying to stop the execution of Bolivar Trask by Mystique. Creating the right balance between those two timelines is tricky. How do you make sure both are as interesting as the other, so that one isn't more engaging, and when you switch away from that timeline, instead of being interested in the current timeline, you're waiting to get back to that timeline. And for me, that's how this movie played out. Maybe it's because I am a huge fan of the originals, but I found the future timeline way more interesting. And like I said, I enjoyed X-Men First Class, so I should have been interested in seeing the Days of Future Past timeline play out with those characters. But I feel like the big issue for me comes from that, in my opinion, outside of Quicksilver, there really wasn't anything new in the past timeline. Besides groovy 70s outfits, the dynamic between the characters felt unsurprising. And again, taking Quicksilver out of the equation, none of the action sequences felt all that memorable. And I think I've identified the problem. The one specific bit of the past timeline that does not work for me. And that is Logan. Now, I love Wolverine. I have been a huge fan of the character since childhood. Maybe it has something to do with him just being awesome, or Hugh Jackman being really entertaining to watch, or maybe it has something to do with the fact that I am 5'6" and he is the most prominent not tall superhero, even though they really messed that up in the movies, but I digress. Even as a big fan of the character of Wolverine, I do not think he worked as the time traveler. So if I could make one small change to X-Men Days of Future Past, it would be this. A different mutant should be sent back in time to the 1970s to stop the assassination of Bolivar Trask. Which mutant, you ask? We'll get to that, but first I want to highlight the problems I have with Wolverine. So when talking about Wolverine, I want to focus on two areas. The first is story shortcomings, what we got and why I don't think that worked. And then the second is the opportunity cost. I'm going to use that word a lot now. And that is an economics term, and it's the idea, by taking Wolverine and sending him into the past, what did we lose? What opportunity did that cost us? So let's start with the story shortcomings. Why does Wolverine, in my opinion, not work in the past? Well, he just doesn't provide much value. Like, first of all, in 2014, we have seen Wolverine a million times. Like, the last movie in the X-Men series that came out before this was the Wolverine, the Wolverine Goes to Japan movie. Like, Wolverine was also a main character in all of the X-Men movies, pushing out potentially more interesting characters like Cyclops, who got mind-controlled in X2 and then unceremoniously killed in 3, which, yeah, James Marsden left to do Superman Returns, but maybe, if he was a bigger part of these stories, he would have stayed with the X-Men movies. Also, we never got much time with Storm, who we'll get to, and just other X-Men mainstays like Beast, and Angel, and Shadowcat, and Rogue. Are they traditionally main characters? Not always, but neither was Wolverine until they decided he was. Other characters could have led these stories, but instead it was always the Wolverine show. And then the franchise was rebooted with X-Men First Class, and a fun and interesting team of mutants was established. But in the next movie in that series, almost all of them were killed off screen, and look who's back, it's Logan himself. And I would excuse the fact that we have seen him a million times if he did something cool and new and interesting, but he doesn't. Wolverine fits in way too well. He already has a relationship with Xavier and Beast and Magneto, so once he is able to establish himself with their past selves, there isn't any real tension between Wolverine and the rest of the team. And when it comes to action, Wolverine doesn't do anything new. His invulnerability levels the stakes. Like, the character of Logan works best when set against an enemy with a real shot at beating him, like Sabretooth, or Mystique, or Magneto, or Lady Deathstrike, or Juggernaut. Origins proved that a fight against an enemy who is outclassed by Wolverine is pointless. Sorry, Gambit and Blob, you're just not there. Also, Wolverine's powers in X-Men Days of Future Past are very similar to Beast's. He's strong, he's durable, he's fast. Plus, Wolverine does not have the adamantium skeleton in the 70s. So when the heroes in the past are fighting Sentinels at the end of the movie, it becomes a free-for-all. There's no interesting way to diversify the characters, and neither Beast nor Wolverine can really do anything interesting to fight them. Like, imagine the fight against the past Sentinels with Storm, or Nightcrawler, or Angel. The fight gets interesting. You have strategies, different powers you can combine, but not in this version of the movie. And then, and maybe my biggest issue with Wolverine being the character that time travels, this does not create any interesting relationships for the future of the prequel series. We already know where Wolverine's gonna end up, captured by Stryker and mind-wiped. And since the X-Men franchise is obsessed with its own bonkers continuity, there isn't any wiggle room. The new friendship between Wolverine, Beast, and the Professor isn't going to go anywhere. And weirdly enough, they just kind of forget about him. Like, not to nitpick, not unlike my podcast, mostly nitpicking, but the rest of the past team never bothers to follow up on their friend who Magneto filled with metal and tossed into the Potomac River. Wolverine is never mentioned in future movies, and even though the kids meet him in Apocalypse and they should know about him since Mystique's failed assassination is a historical event that we see Scott watch in history class, when they meet one of the key figures from that fight, they don't care. This doesn't register to them at all. And yeah, Wolverine wasn't on that video, but it would still at least be something people know, or at least something that the professor told the students, like Jean, right? Who do they think 70s Wolverine is? What do they think happened? And then, because the movie needs to get everyone to their starting places for the sequel, there's this really awkward moment where Stryker fishes Wolverine out of the water at the end of Days of Future Past, and it's revealed that the Stryker we watched rescue Wolverine was actually Mystique. So like, I know I just did this, but not to nitpick, not unlike my podcast, Mostly Nitpicking, please subscribe, but what? So Mystique is impersonating Stryker, then why does Wolverine still end up in the Weapon X program? And what happened to the original Stryker? He was right there. When we meet him again in Apocalypse, he isn't Mystique. In fact, he captures Mystique and he doesn't care. It never gets referenced. He doesn't have some sort of personal grudge against Mystique for that time she impersonated him. I honestly think they just did this because at the end of X-Men 1, Mystique impersonates Senator Kelly and we have almost the exact same little look where the eyes flash yellow and you're like, oh, that's Mystique. But at the end of that movie, it made sense and set up an interesting opportunity for the future in X2, where Senator Kelly, who is secretly Mystique, a mutant, is in the Oval Office with the president and Stryker arguing against Stryker's plan to invade the X-Mansion. But this wasn't that. This was just like, oh, look, that one's Mystique. It doesn't hold up for more than a second, because then your brain goes, wait a second, why? And you're thinking, well, maybe this Wolverine is not going to go into the Weapon X program. But then in the next movie, X-Men Apocalypse, there he is. And it's the mind-controlled version, the one you would expect from the movies. So like, what? And I am only harping on the continuity because the X-Men movies are obsessed with it. If we never saw the end bit, or regular Stryker got Wolverine, or we never met Wolverine again, it would not matter. But these movies care enough to constantly reference their own continuity and then ignore it, because I honestly don't know. So let's talk about the opportunity cost of Wolverine. What are we losing by sending him into the past? Well, we are losing a Wolverine in the future. Wolverine fighting these scary future Sentinels alongside the rest of the characters from the original trilogy. So first of all, besides what's going to happen in Logan, this is the logical last step for this character. Wolverine leading the team along with maybe Storm and Magneto would be so cool. I mean, these movies have already built him up as the leader anyway, so why not have him leading a team of mutants he knows? He knows Colossus, he knows Iceman, Storm, Magneto, Professor X, Kitty. We could do cool things. Have Colossus do a fastball special, which is that move where he tosses Wolverine, but not like the one from X3 where he like heaves him. I'm talking one where he straight up throws him into the air. It's much cooler in the comics, and it's very awkward in X-Men The Last Stand. I don't know, that's just a personal preference thing. Also, have Magneto use Wolverine as a projectile, just like tossing him in the air through Sentinels, ripping them apart. Have Storm use Wolverine as a lightning rod. There are so many things you could do with that character. And when you want to change the energy of the fight a little bit, Wolverine getting killed would be a great, uh-oh, this is getting real moment. Like all of the other mutants see their leader, who up until this point they have believed to be indestructible, getting destroyed. And also, this is just because I'm a big comic fan, but in Days of Future Past, there is a very famous panel where a Sentinel just blasts Wolverine, like obliterates him. So we could show that moment on screen. Not only would it be cool fan service, but it would be scary for us, the audience, and the characters in the movie. Like, oh my gosh, these guys can beat Wolverine, and we have no leader. We're screwed. So those are my Wolverine issues. But then, who do we put in his place? You know? If only there were someone who wasn't doing anything important from the future team, who could be sent back in time in Wolverine's place and would address all of those issues while also creating some fun new opportunities. If only there was some character. And it turns out, because of the way I set it up, this should be pretty obvious, there is. And I will explain who that is in the second part of this 2-video series. Oh, and one more thing. So, we've been talking about X-Men Days of Future Past. It's a movie where the X-Men fail to stop the rise of the Sentinels, and they pinpoint the exact moment things went wrong, find a way to send a character back in time, and then reset the timeline to make everything right. You can learn that lesson from the X-Men, or you can learn it from fellow YouTuber Thomas Frank's new class called Real Productivity: How to Build Habits That Last. Part of the class is Thomas giving you strategies on how to work through failure, whether that task is learning to play a guitar or stopping the army of killer robots before they destroy all of mutant kind. The fundamentals are basically the same. And if you'd like to get a look at Real Productivity: How to Build Habits That Last in over 25,000 other classes, I would definitely check out this video's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people. You can explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity. There are classes in productivity, design, writing, video editing, so much more. Skillshare offers classes designed for real life so you can move your creative journey forward without putting your life on hold. It's also incredibly affordable. An annual subscription is less than $10 a month. And if you would like to join the millions of people already learning on Skillshare today, the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 2-month free trial of premium membership so that you can explore your creativity. Discover, create, and inspire with Skillshare. As always, I have to give a huge thank you to everyone who continues to support the channel on Patreon. You guys are the best. You want to see your name up here, get access to videos early, other cool stuff, throw in literally any amount of money at patreon.com/nandoviamovies. And we do this new thing called whiteboard videos, where every month you guys give me a topic and I do a live stream where I answer that question or brainstorm some idea. So in January, we did how I would integrate the Fantastic Four into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In February, we did how Justin Hammer could be the big bad of Phase 4. Not sure what we're doing in March. I have an idea because some ideas are close, but they're not all quite done yet. Hi, Mortimer. Oh, hi. You having fun? He's having fun. So throw in any amount of money. You can watch all those old videos and the newer ones as they come out. Throw in $5 or more and you can join the new Patreon tier, the Illuminati Woo Spooky Patrons. And the idea there is Illuminati members get to suggest ideas for future whiteboard videos and then vote on them. So whatever video we do, that's because the Illuminati decided that was what they wanted to see. So if you just want to watch the videos, any amount of money. If you want to have some control over what I talk about, that's the Illuminati, baby. That's what it is. That's how it works. Who am I, Vince Vaughn? So you want to watch the whiteboard videos, chuck in $1 or $2. You want to decide what they're about? Join the Illuminati. It's all at patreon.com/nandoviamovies. Also, listen to my podcast, Mostly Nitpicking, where every week me and my co-hosts, DJ and Diggins, pick apart a piece of pop culture by looking exclusively at the details. We just did Onward. Movie releases are weird now, so it's hard to say exactly what we're going to do, when we're going to do it. We did an episode on the movie Ma, because that was something we could watch. I'm hoping with all the hope in me that New Mutants gets released on Hulu. Disney, if you want to be really bold, throw it on Hulu or Disney Plus on April 1st. Make it an April Fool's joke, but actually it's real. Because that would be the biggest April Fool's joke. If I woke up to a notification that's just New Mutants is released, you can watch it right now, I'd never believe it. So that's a good way to prank us, Disney, and that'll show us. So if New Mutants gets released, we're definitely doing that in the podcast too. We are at Nitpicking Pod on Twitter. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Last thing, as always, follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at NandoVMovies. It's where I post updates on videos and podcasts and where I talk about the fact that apparently the actual Rise of Skywalker novelization contains a passage very similar to my Chewbacca Ben Solo scene. So that's crazy. But yeah, that's all I got. I'll see you next time.